Welcome. I think you're in for a great day today and some great presentations, and hopefully everybody's going to be learning a lot. So, yeah, Hadrian said I've been here less than a year. It'll actually be 6 months on Sunday, and who's counting, right? No. I've really enjoyed being here and working with you all, as well as the other associates on campus and all of the staff of ITS. So, this, I think, will provide you, sorry, I'm kind of a wanderer while I talk, so if I just have to walk around to keep to the microphone, I won't. I'll try to stand here. But I think we're in for a really great day. I think that the resources that we have here at Case Western Reserve have really helped us to be way out front in research in many ways. As Hadrian said, I came from Indiana University, and the actual grant production from Case Western, which is much, much smaller, about 10% of the size of Indiana University, the grant production is actually larger than all of Indiana University put together. So congratulations on that, and let's keep that up. I think that's great. So, we're here primarily for these guys, right? To create teaching and learning for students, but then also the research mission of the university has been very, very important, and is one of the reasons that Case is such a great university. So when we think about cyber infrastructure, what do you think about? Yell it out. What do you think about when you think about cyber infrastructure?
Data storage.
Excuse me?
Data storage.
Data storage. What else do you think about?
Network speed.
Network speed. I heard networks, big networks. What else? Connectivity. Software. So I think we also think about high-performance computing or supercomputing, right? So I think that the term has kind of become something that is more thought about in supercomputing, as well as high-speed networking. Those are some of the things that we just connect when we think about cyber infrastructure. But I decided, since our keynote, which is going to be a little delayed as I understand, but our keynote is from National Science Foundation, so I thought maybe I should find out about what NSF thinks about cyber infrastructure. And you can see here there's several, there's actually 3 categories that they look at. One is a grand convergence. The second is essential but not optional. And the third is discovery, learning, and leadership. So when we look at that, when we really look at the grand convergence, what we're really looking at is the grand convergence of what? So over time, NSF has thought about the grand convergence of the internet and all the things that has become far more accessible because of the internet. It's not just the email carrier anymore. We're doing all the great big things through these big pipes and getting data and analysis out. Databases are the second part of that convergence. We have databases for almost any kind of analytics you want to do. And so we have to be able to figure out how to get that data together and analyze it. The third part of that convergence is microchip technology. So when we think about supercomputers and the big things, yeah, the microchip technology has happened. But what we're also starting to see here is that microchips are filling everything, right? Homes, cars, refrigerators, every kind of thing on your wrist these days. I mean, this little, it's a Microsoft band. I mean, it tells me how many fat calories I burn versus carb calories when I work out. It tells me my heart rate. Do I really need to know my heart rate 24 hours a day? I did want to look though. Oh, I should look. See how many calories I burn while I'm talking to you here today. Anyway, but there's all kinds of microchip technologies. And so when NSF's thinking about cyber infrastructure, they're not just thinking about big kind of devices anymore. It's this convergence of all kinds of devices and all kinds of chips that are made of those devices. So they published this. The convergence of these and other trends have led researchers to envision a tightly integrated, planet-wide grid of computing, information, networking, and sensor resources, a grid that we could one day tap as easily as we now use a power socket or a water faucet. So, really, someday, and I think it's today, really, the infrastructure of the network and the infrastructure of cyber infrastructure is really as pervasive as what we see in the infrastructure of a large city or a town. The second category that NSF talked about was that this is essential and it's not optional anymore. So environments and organizations enabled by cyber infrastructure are increasingly required to address national and global priorities, such as the understanding global climate change, protecting our natural environment, applying genomics, proteomics to human health, maintaining national security, mastering the world of nanotechnology, predicting and protecting against natural and human disasters, as well as to address some of our most fundamental intellectual questions, such as the formation of the universe and the fundamental character of matter. So we see that this kind of computing and cyber infrastructure is really not optional. The third category that they're looking at here from NSF is discovery, learning, and leadership. And the goals of this category is that our national cyber infrastructure is second to none. Personally, I think we have to keep moving on this very, very fast. I'm not sure that we can keep up unless we start really moving much faster in the world's IT infrastructure. The second part of the NSF's discovery, learning, and leadership category is that cyber infrastructure is widely distributed and shareable. So we need to really be working on how we distribute that. And the third is basically to advance discovery, learning, and innovation across the science and engineering enterprises. So when we start to look at these kinds of things, we start to think about some of the things that are happening. But I thought, okay, let's also look at a different definition of cyber infrastructure. So I went to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia describes cyber infrastructure like this. It is research environments that support advanced data acquisition, data storage, data management, data integration, data mining, data visualization, and other computing and information processing services distributed over the internet beyond the scope of a single institution. In scientific usage, cyber infrastructure is a technological and sociological solution to the problem of efficiently connecting laboratories, data, computers, and people with the goal of enabling derivation of novel scientific theories and knowledge. So there's just a little bit broader definition here of what cyber infrastructure really is. So when we think back to the origins, this is really kind of the origin of cyber infrastructure. You know, those of us who are old enough or were in the United States during the time of Al Gore, remember it was called the information superhighway. And it was really built around national security to begin with. And then begin to look at how we access our data. Cyber infrastructure wasn't even used as a term until 1998. This is according to Google. So that's my term. And where Richard Clark, who was in national security, he used it in 1998 in reference to security. So at that point in time, cyber infrastructure kind of got attached to security. And so a lot of people thought about cyber infrastructure as cybersecurity. But you know what we are finding out now and have known for a while is that it's really much more than that. Now, when I found this picture. I had to put it in here just for Tom, because wouldn't we love it if security was really this simple? Just press the button, and we're done. But that's not how it is anymore, and so we have to be able to really protect the data that we're using. How many of you worked on TeraGrid or Exceed? Several, yeah. So, this project really provided the connection of many high research institutions to be able to work together and work on with great large computers and processing power in order to do research. And so my little portion of this is that my team at IU provided the knowledge management and support for TeraGrid, and then Exceed after that. So, but it was a big project. It still is ongoing, and trying to pull together a lot of infrastructure for research. But the big point about all of this really is collaboration. And how do we collaborate? It's not within a single institution. It's with an institution across the nation to make things very, very accessible. And so we have all kinds of collaborators that, cyber infrastructure is really going to impact. We're going to start seeing things in a whole new way. And envisioning our data in a whole new way. We've been doing visualization for a while, but I think we're just on the cusp of really making visualization a commodity technology, where I think we will see in the next 3 years a very different way of looking at large data sets in a very easy format. But then, we still have to have the back end and those big data centers to run some of these kinds of technologies. So let's talk briefly about what we're doing here at Case Western Reserve University. This is the Peter B. Lewis building. Really, the foundation of all of this has been a long-term work. So the previous CIO, a few back, Ray Neff, actually brought fiber into Case Western Reserve, some 7,300 network connections to faculty office, student residence halls, classrooms, libraries. And so Case Western Reserve was a leader here, one of the first to have this kind of connection for faculty, staff, and students. Case Western Reserve was one of the early members of the different kinds of institutions and services that are focusing on research. Internet 2 is one of those, which brought big research organizations together to begin with networks. We're still very active in Internet 2, and we'll actually be hosting Internet 2 here in Cleveland in October for a very large conference, the annual conference here. Case Western Reserve was also one of the early members of the National Lambda Rail. National Lambda Rail no longer exists as an entity, but has folded into others. So the Internet 2 in UCLA, the fall of 2002, was a demonstration of one of the first ways that we were able to use this network speed without latency. So Dr. Galbraith, which is in the Department of Dance here, actually had 3 dancers and 2 musicians that were located in Los Angeles, and 3 dancers and 3 musicians here in Cleveland, and used the network to do a joint performance. So this is in 2002. So that was a pretty big achievement to be able to use the network and be able to do those kinds of things. And I heard just yesterday, I was having lunch with a few CTOs, and I heard that his work is continuing, and he's continuing to do this kind of experiment with distance kind of connections. So that was a real big deal in 2002. We also became the first university to upgrade to the ORNet 100 gigabit network. This was in 2013. And we, in a daily, it actually referenced our own Dan Matthews that said, giving research across access to 10 gigabytes network path will mean reducing transfer times from 3 hours to 20 minutes when working with 1 terabyte data sets. So, that was a really big deal a couple of years ago. It's still a pretty big deal, actually. And so that was a really good thing. So what about Cleveland? What are we doing in Cleveland with cyber infrastructure? Well, this really helps. Cleveland, as you probably heard last November, One Community announced the first commercially available 100 gigabyte network. And so this was a partnership really with One Community, Case Western Reserve, IdeaStream, the City of Cleveland, the Cleveland Health Tech Corridor, and University Hospitals. This is a big deal. This will actually bring businesses to Cleveland, but it also will allow research to be done much more quickly between the health buildings, up and down the corridor here, and Euclid, as well as research technology on the campus. So there's other cities that are looking to do this kind of thing and looking to Cleveland to help advise how to do that. You might notice, or might see this guy that you know here. There's Lev Gonik, my predecessor, and Lev is with One Community now. But a couple of weekends ago, One Community with Case Western Reserve sponsored a young woman participating in the Innovation of Things Olympiad, and these were the winners. They actually got $1,000. But this is really good, because why do we have cyber infrastructure? Is to invent, right? Is to make new things. And so this 100 gigabyte network that we have to be able to use it. And we have to be able to use the capacity that it is really needed. So this was a real great event that it actually, the attendance of this young women's event was actually double what was expected. So we were really happy with that. So let's talk a little bit about what are the keys to the future. What do we want to do, and what do we need to do at Case Western Reserve to keep up our national reputation and to keep our cyber infrastructure moving? Well, it'd be nice if we had a slam dunker. But in some ways we do. We have all of you. We have researchers that are able to do these kinds of things and really bring that home. Mentioned earlier, we want cyber infrastructure to be as easy as the city infrastructure. I think we're there. I mean, with the 100 gigabyte networks, with some of the new kinds of technologies going to the home, I think that we have the possibility of really using that to really move us forward. High performance computing certainly is on our roadmap all the time, and we want to keep that moving faster and growing bigger all of the time. Visualization, I mentioned earlier, I think we're right there on the cusp. I think we will start to see things happen here at Case Western Reserve with more just commodity kind of visualization and 3D imaging. So I think that there's a whole lot that's available there. I had to put this picture, and I just like this picture. But of course, we have to maintain our networks. We don't need to tie them up with binder twine. But what we need to do is make sure that we keep expanding them and having them available and able to transfer the data that is needed for our research activities. Of course, storage. One of you mentioned storage early on. We'll have to keep expanding storage, whether that's local, whether that's cloud, whether that's whatever. We do have a new FSMA-controlled research storage area that's about ready to go live. But we may need big storage. So we have to keep making sure that we are on top of the storage requirements for all of you. Secure data. One of the very, very first concerns that I've had here is all about security and risk. So we have beefed up the security team. We are putting some new practices in place, but in order to really move us forward, we have to continue to make sure our data is protected. Probably one of the most important things, though, is really to continue our collaboration between ITS and researchers, and to make sure that we are using our brains and our resources so that it will move that research forward so we can get a lot of grants. But this is important, I think, to continue to make sure that we are there. What? Oh, well, yeah, I don't think that's Grant, is it? Or somebody like maybe just went in and did a little artwork. So the Internet of Things, we talked about a little bit already, but you know, it's not just about this high performance computing. It's also about how do we use this? How do we use our cyber infrastructure? How do we get all of the information out and make sure that we are communicating to our refrigerators, because you know we need to know that we're out of milk. No, just kidding. But you know, I think that the whole home environment is changing. We also need to be able to talk to anything within the university and be able to look at that. So there's a whole new world coming. There's something we need to prepare for. There's a lot of things that we have already learned, and so those are some things that we'll share with you today. So I encourage you, as you go through your day, question the answers. Let's figure out, are we actually, do we have the right answers? Do we need to do some things differently? How can we make this better? What do you need as researchers? What do you need as IT people? What do you need in order to continue to make and retain the great reputation of Case Western Reserve, as well as the great research and outcomes that are coming here? So question those answers, but also question the questions. What else do we need to know? Are we asking the right questions? Do we have the right topics that we are addressing? So I think you're going to have a really great day today. We are just excited that you're here.